Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight we are here for the Champions League match day action. It is Atalanta away. It's match day 3. We've got one win and one defeat in the bag. How is tonight going to go? We know what the teams are going to be, and we're going to have a look at them in a wee bit more detail in a second or two. We're going to bring Jungle Lion right into the chat here on the YouTube. Same tactics, admire his faith, but... ... We spoke about this all week in relation to how we're going to face Atalanta, a very stern opposition this evening in Italy. Big shout out to every single Celtic fan who has made that trip to Bergamo. And when that does happen, unfortunately, we don't have as many Acsom contributors available to chat on match day. That happens tonight. You're stuck with me. Hopefully we can get through this together. Another hiding tonight, says IH Decorating. All week I have been looking at this game tonight, thinking to myself, look, how do we avoid another Dortmund? We had one in Madrid last season. We had one in Madrid the season before. It seems to be a season-on-season occurrence. And in particular, when we face a team that you would consider as one of the top-end elite clubs of European football, particularly away from home, it is extremely difficult to get any kind of positive result. Thank you, every single one of you, for tuning in. We're sitting at 200 live at this moment in time, and we're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, and of course, X, Instagram as well. Absolutely, yeah. Welcome to everybody who is joining us on the Instagram Live, which is relatively new. And we'll get through tonight one way or another. But today, I've just come home from Glasgow, literally half an hour ago. We were recording This Is Acsom, and everybody who was involved, of course, was talking about tonight's encounter. And what can we do differently? Well, it looks as though when you look at the starting 11, we certainly will not be doing anything differently, unless the personnel can play a slightly different way. So let's have a look at Celtic's starting 11, and we'll run through that right now. And I think when you look at the image, one of the biggest discussion points was around the midfield, and we now know, of course, that Rio Hatate starts the game. Let's run through the starting 11. It's Kasper Schmeichel in goals, right back Alistair Johnston, left back Alex Baye. We've also got Austin Trusty and Liam Scales as your two centre halves. The midfield three is made up of Callum McGregor, the captain as always, Arnie Engels and Rio Hatate. And then up top, we have Nicholas Kuhn on the right, Dyson Maeda on the left, and through the middle, big Adam Ida. Now, I gave my predicted 11 during the week on the back of the performance that we've seen at the weekend against Aberdeen, but also with one eye on the last game we played in the Champions League. Of course, it was such a disappointing night in Dortmund. I was looking at not even damage limitation. I was looking at playing a certain way that may have protected our defence slightly better. So my midfield three was indeed McGregor, Engels and Bernardo tonight. Brendan Rodgers is bold. He's gone for Hatate. I know he can be an absolute game changer. Will he be tonight? Let's wait and see. It's not that long to kick off. It's an early kick-off tonight. Of course, the match kicks off at 5:45 Celtic Park time over in Italy. And up top as well, Kyogo drops out for Adam Ida. Now, there was a suggestion that we would play with one up top. It looks as though we're going for the usual three with the two wingers. Nicholas Kuhn has been overall excellent, I would say, this season. But there has been a few games where he has not been at his usual standard. And one of them, unfortunately, was in Germany. But at the weekend, I would also suggest that in the second half, after a promising first 45, that Nicholas Kuhn dropped away slightly. Tonight, we need to get him back on form. And we need, if he gets that opportunity like he did in Germany, we need him to be clinical. He has been clinical domestically, and he did do well against Bratislava. Tonight is a completely different standard of opposition. We need players like Kuhn to step up. On the bench, we've got the two goalies, Sinisalo, who we've not seen in action yet, Scott Bain, perennially unused substitute. On the wings then, what have we got on the wings? We've got Louis Palmer, we've got Yang, and we have James A. Forrest. Now, I said at the weekend as well, in relation to the wingers, that the best option from the bench was James Forrest. When Brendan Rodgers called upon, back up from the bench. It was indeed Jamesy who got the nod. What does that say about the future of Palmer and Yang? Well, I don't think they've done enough this season, certainly, to feature. They might come on. They might play a part tonight. A lot of that will go down to how the game is going, obviously, but also the form of Kuna Maeda. I'm going to come back to Maeda because, again, that was a poor performance by his standards against Aberdeen, to blame for one of the goals and just not on it at all throughout the game that finished 2 each. In the midfield then, what's our options? Our options are, of course, Bernardo, who I would have started tonight, and Luke McCowan, who hasn't yet had a competitive start for Celtic. If we need backup at the back, then we've got 2 centre-halves and Mike Nawrocki and Stephen Welsh, and of course, the ever adaptable Tony Ralston, who can play right or left back, preferably on the right. That's the lineup tonight. How are you feeling? Let me know in the comments section. How are you feeling? Jim Orr has called this, I think, a 2-coucher. I'm going for a 3-coucher. But let me tell you about the conversation that we had and the confidence that was within that in Glasgow earlier on this afternoon. We were in, of course, to interview our latest guest for This Is Acsom. And I can reveal that it's Chloe Craig. Tomorrow, we have a very special guest in the form of a certain Mick Lynch. So there you go. There's the next 2 episodes, this Friday and next Friday, at your disposal on Acsom's YouTube channel. Get subscribing to the channel, give us a thumbs up, and hopefully we can talk after the game tonight and be in a very good mood looking towards the weekend's game against Motherwell. What do you make of the start 11? I'm going to bring Atalanta's team up in just a second or two before we finish. Looking and analysing the Celtic side. Let's have a look at Atalanta, the team we're going to face tonight. There we have it. Gasperini, of course, a long-serving manager at Atalanta. It's a long-term project and it is paying dividends. They are a team to be respected. Some might say even feared tonight in the Champions League. Celtic up against it, but we go in bold. We go in with the same shape and the same personnel that we would go into a normal domestic game. Is that something that you think is the right approach by Brendan Rodgers? He came out after the Dortmund game. It was bold. He said that's how he would play. We've had the discussions on here to suggest that, of course, he's going to say that and he might do something different. But I'm looking at the personnel tonight in the start 11, and I don't know what else we could do with that because we've got 3 midfielders, so we're playing with the usual lineup in the midfield. I thought perhaps 2 pivots, 2 defensive midfielders to protect the back 4 with less of an onus on the full-backs to be playing that inverted role, with the wingers to play slightly deeper and with 1 focal point up front. I suppose we could still do that. It would not be natural to the personnel that's been played there, though, would it? Unless we play McGregor and Engels. And how can we flood the midfield with the remaining Hatate, more of an offensive player? Up top, what do you make of Kyogo dropping to the bench? That in itself is quite a bold move. I don't think he was at his best against Aberdeen, but a big part of that for me was the wingers. Of course, Maeda, who we've already mentioned, and Kuhn didn't have the best afternoon, and Kyogo suffered for that. So let me know in the comment section, and if anybody at Celtic's watching, why don't we copy Atalanta's graphics? Because that was pretty impressive. And even though the Celtic graphic is far more impressive than looking at the entire screen of my head, because no one is joining me this evening, except, of course, everybody in the comment section. So let's bring you in. You're going to have far more of an opportunity to make your voice heard. We've already heard tonight from Jungle Line and IH Decorating. Who else is in on the chat? We've got McLaughlin P. You're in. I hope he's playing 4-4-1-1. Yeah, I get that. 4-4-1-1. Who would the midfield 4 be then? Because I'm guessing that you're then playing with 2 wingers who are basically playing left and right on the flank rather than up top. And then you would have perhaps Rio Hatate playing behind Adam Ida. I think it's one of the things you do that when you're defending. And when you're attacking, you play your usual 4-3-3. I would suggest that would be what he would go for, McLaughlin, as bold as it sounds. I think, John Hartson was on This Is Acsom on Friday night last week, and the big fella, he knows a thing or two about getting to European finals. He played in one for Arsenal. He missed out in Seville, but he got us there as much as anybody else in the games leading up to the match against Porto. And he played in a Super Cup final against AC Milan, two-legged affair. So he has played at that level, and his suggestion was certainly to play a far more defensive formation when we are obviously under the cosh, rather than going gung-ho. Now, let's bring in Ian Roy. It's always a pleasure to see you in the chat, Ian. You are, of course, based in Florida. What a day. Started with TCW, the Celtic Way, then Acsom earlier at 12:30. Just listened to Baz on One Celtic Fan's View. Now you're back on at Acsom with a little libation. What is it, though? What is your choice of beverage this evening, Ian? And it's only noon here in Florida. Dearie me. I'll tell you something else. If everybody got together and coordinated it, you probably could watch 3 or 4 hours of Celtic chat every single day. We love Scotland, you're in. Let's hope Hatate doesn't give it away in dangerous positions. This is the danger I fear with Rio Hatate. I think in terms of a naturally gifted midfielder, he's the best we've got. There would have been probably a discussion to be had when Matt O'Reilly was at the club, insofar as who was the best of the two. But Rio Hatate is the most naturally gifted midfield player that we've got. The thing with that, though, is he does play the risky pass. And because of that, he could lose possession, unfortunately. But again, what's the payoff? The payoff is a pass that goes through the lines, cuts through the lines, and breaks maybe one of the wingers or Adamida through on goal. So, yeah, he is a risk worth taking. And, in terms of losing the ball in dangerous positions, who did that at the weekend? Maeda. He also done it against Borussia Dortmund. I think also Kuhn was guilty of that against Dortmund, as was Baye. So we have other players who have been guilty of that. Rio Hatate is a risk taker. He plays a lot of balls that try to cut through the lines, and in order to do that, some of them will be cut out and he'll lose possession. We need, says Celtic follower, to keep the ball and avoid slack passing. Yes, I think that the tempo that we are used to domestically goes out the window in terms of our opposition, and everything steps up various notches. Even talking to Chloe Craig today, who has represented Celtic in the Champions League over a few seasons, was talking about the increase in quality when you come up against, in her case, a team like Levante, and it's so difficult to adapt as a team, as a unit, because it's the pace and it's the tempo. And again, when you're playing your domestic football, similarly with the men's game, and you're playing against a team like even Aberdeen, who are second in the league, it's a huge difference to then step up to play Atalanta tonight. So we know that. What are Atalanta's frailties? What are the vulnerabilities that we could perhaps expose? Like Ian Roy, in order to do my own kind of research pre-match, I've been listening to some of the shows who have had Atalanta fans, representatives, etc. on, and it would appear to me that we can go down the flanks. It looks as though perhaps their weak link would be their own fullback. So we need Maeda and we need Kuhn to be on the absolute top of their game. Rio Hatate is the type of player who could get them in round the back into the pockety space behind the fullbacks. If they hit the line and they get the ball over, then anything is possible. So apparently, I say apparently because a lot of these teams don't really have many weaknesses, and even when they do, the level doesn't come down to the point where you are able to have a go at them. But that would appear to be their weakness, and let's hope we're able to capitalise on that. McMahon 67, an evening to you, good evening to you as well. Ian Corbett, my daughter passed, here we go, her driving test today, so a point or a win would top off a great day. Ian, say congratulations to your daughter, please. I got somehow through it myself first time, but I was a wee bit older. I was 26 years of age when I passed my driving test, and thankfully I've not had a crash in a while, but I have been known from time to time to hit around about. Joe Hamilton, time for the boys to step up and get stuck in. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. When I look at the fixtures, and let's remind ourselves of the fixtures here. When I look at the fixtures, my view has not changed in relation to where we are with them. Aston Villa are looking dangerous, aren't they? Deary me. By the time we face them, they could already have probably, cemented their place in the final 16. Obviously, we will be looking to try and get a playoff place to get us into that area of the competition. Aston Villa might already have been in there because they are on top form. Absolutely brilliant side. But when I looked at that, that set of fixtures when we first seen the draw, and I was looking at the potential wins, the potential points, my view hasn't really changed. I didn't expect anything from Dortmund. It was a manner in which we shipped the 7 goals. I'll say it again. I think that, regardless of how well we played on the night, Borussia Dortmund, the likelihood is they would have won the game. In any case, it was the manner in which we lost the game. It was the fact that we were not the best version of this Celtic that we've seen this season. Some would argue that we've not been the best version in the last few games. And I was listening with interest, John Hughes and Paddy McGill talking about just that when I was on my way through to Glasgow earlier on this afternoon. The fact that we didn't turn up against Dortmund. We need to be at our absolute peak, the peak of our powers against Atalanta tonight, to avoid such an embarrassing, humbling result as we saw in Germany. Did I expect anything from Atalanta coming into the 8 fixtures? No, I didn't. And I didn't expect anything from Dortmund or indeed from Aston Villa. I always looked at Leipzig and thought to myself, that's going to be a tricky game, even with the home support and the home advantage. And the other 4 games were the 4 I was looking at to try and gain some kind of pointage going into that playoff, if indeed possible. I'm now looking at the last 3 home games, and I'm looking at Bruges and Young Boys, and I'm hoping that we can get 2 wins in those 2 games. From the away fixtures, I'll tell you, if we can get 1 point from the remaining 3 away fixtures, I think we are still in the running to get into the promised land of 10 Champions League games this season. Obviously, we'll be playing post-Christmas. You can see that from the fixtures. But how great would it be to go into the January transfer window knowing that there is a chance that you could sign players that could assist you in the latter stages of this competition? It's still possible, ladies and gents. I'm always optimistic, but I do think it's still possible. Will we get anything from tonight? Who knows? I'm not counting any chickens, but I'm going to be feeling positive about it. I think Joe's right. We need to turn up, step up. And as Jim Conlon says, we didn't get the good performance that we needed against Dortmund. We need to see something like that tonight. Now, we're going to bring in Christoforis. Now, you, Christoforis, are commenting on the X platform. We are now streaming live on X. I've got to say, technophobe, that is me. We were streaming live on X previously. Something happened. I couldn't get it on. And then I realised you've got to have that blue tick. So we had to switch it over from the Acsom page, and we are now streaming on X. Thanks for joining us and getting involved in the chat. Brendan alluded to sticking to a way of playing in the presser. He did, didn't he? This is a club with an identity. Let's not forget we did it by playing football. Pure, beautiful, inventive football. Keep the faith. Listen, I love that positivity. I really do. And again, whenever I'm talking to players, I try to get as much information as I can from them in relation to going into a game which where you're probably the underdog. How on earth do you get the group of players up for that? And even Chloe was talking about games against Rangers, games against Glasgow City, Champions League games, where they do play video content in the changing room before they go out, and it's a war and it's a battle, and you go out there and you're at the absolute peak of your powers. All your senses are heightened. You know exactly what's on the line. So, you know what? These are not empty words. And I think that's what we refer to when we talk about the Celtic way, isn't it? That quote by Jockstein. We did it by playing football, pure, beautiful, inventive football. Ever since the Dortmund game, we've been talking about changing the style, changing the identity, going into a game and playing more defensively. I've spoken about it tonight. I thought we would do it. He's going bold, Christoforis. He certainly is going bold. Tony Cassidy, always an absolute pleasure to see you in the chat on the YouTube. Come on, the Celtic, says Tony. And I cannot agree more. Mick Celtic 67, moan the Celts. Give us a song, Paul. What song would you like to hear, Michael? What song would you like to hear, mate? And we'll see what we can do after the game when we're all feeling jovial. Who was the guest today, says Jungle Line? Today we had Chloe Craig on. Chloe Craig, the episode will go out on Friday night. Now, Tony Cassidy's a fan of the women's game and the team. Tell me, Tony, I think this is the case. I think that Chloe Craig has made more appearances for Celtic's women than any other player. She's certainly scored more goals. She's hit over 100 goals for Celtic FC women's team, which is a phenomenal achievement. And then next week, Jungle Lion, tune in because we do have this gentleman right here. Let me just show you some of the research I've been doing earlier. This chap here, Mick Lynch, a working class hero. We're going to be talking to him about Irish republicanism, about James Connolly, about the working classes, about stepping up to what's happening in the world today in relation to the governments in which we seem to be led by people who do not share the same views as us, a government that is veering into right-wing politics. We will be talking to Mick Lynch about all of that and more. John McVeigh says, hail, hail for Thailand. John, you're normally a very positive Celtic fan and Acsom contributor. So tell me, what do you think the score is going to be tonight, John? You and Boy Martin, always a pleasure to see you, and I'll see you again on Friday night when you join us for the Gordon Strachan and John Hartson gig. It's an absolute sellout. It's going to be rammed. There's a waiting list for that particular gig. And if you want to come along and see what all the fuss is about, because these gigs have been selling out, John Collins will be joining us next on the 1st of December. Ticket link under the video. Right, well positioned behind your couch. Jim Orr says it's a two-coucher. Come on, how are you feeling going into these games? Have we made this mistake before, getting a bit positive going in to the Dortmund game and then getting an absolute whipping? Positive thoughts, says We Love Scotland. You've got to back it up as well, haven't you, with the ability. Now, John Sweeney, our back four too high up, and even a team like Aberdeen score 2 goals and play the same way. It's a hiding again. Now, I'm going to bring this in, okay? We've got Opinionated Glaswegian, the OG. And you're telling me that you don't have the faith in Trusty. Now, the thing is here, by the way, something from the Rebel Collection. I don't know the Rebel Collection. I thought you were talking about Kevin Graham et al. We might get cancelled, Michael, but there's quite a good few tunes that I know all the lyrics to that I could sing, but I don't think you want to hear my singing voice, mate. Let's talk about Trusty then. And again, with regards to that, what we have is a situation where Brendan Rodgers comes to the football club, he looks at the squad and decides that, of course, we need to replace Carl Starfelt. Carl Starfelt actually played a game, you'll remember, under Brendan Rodgers. He played that game against Ross County, didn't he, which was the opener, Flag Day, which also showed that Rio Atati wasn't in the plans at that moment because David Turnbull started the game, got the man of the match and got on the score sheet. And I think that Brendan Rodgers knew at that point that we had a situation with Cameron Carter-Vickers, who had gone in for his surgery and he missed the Scottish Cup final, which was Ange Postecoglou's final game. So there was that crossover where Cameron Carter-Vickers has not been fit at the end of the previous season and the start of Brendan Rodgers' season. And we had something of an injury crisis. We've gone out, we've signed 2 centre-halves in the shape of Gustav Lagerbielke and also Mike Nawrocki, who's on the bench tonight, none of whom seem to be good enough in the view of the manager. So it was through all the set of circumstances there that Liam Scales has come in, and we know the journey that Liam Scales has been on. Cameron Carter-Vickers, the start of this season, a year on, and he's injured again, different type of injury. But what we have done is we've gone out and we've signed a player for £6 million this time. So we signed Nawrocki for 4.2, Lagerbielke for 3 million, Trusty for 6 million. Have we found the answer yet? And all the while, we had a player that was signed from Shamrock Rovers for £500,000 and who looked as though he was on his way out to Aberdeen. And he's been the rock in the central defensive area, even when obviously Cameron Carter-Vickers has been in the team and out the team. Liam Scales has been the constant since he came in during that injury crisis, and he deserves it. But I have seen a lot of people, Opinionated Glaswegian, I've seen a lot of people sharing your view in relation to Trusty. I'm not prepared to go that hard on him at the moment. And I mean, as hard as calling him a bomb scare. I'm not prepared to go there. I'm not sitting on the fence. Am I 100% convinced? I'm going to say no at the moment, but not insofar as that I'm going to tear him to pieces and all that kind of stuff. I think he's playing on the wrong side. I think he's a natural left-sided player. That's impossible when all you've got is two left-sided players. Someone is going to have to adapt and go over and play on the right. We've seen how it affected Starfelt, even though he built up that consistent partnership with Cameron Carter-Vickers. Are you convinced with Trusty yet? Let us know in the comments section. Because what we should be seeing is if you think about it, right, we've got a £6 million defender already in Cameron Carter-Vickers, and we want to strengthen. So what we do is we go out and we spend 4.2 on Nawrocki, we spend £3 million on Lagerbielke, and a further £6 million on Trusty. So from those four players, you would think that you could assemble a centre-half partnership that would be absolutely solid. But it doesn't always work like that. And what we've got now is Liam Scales, who is absolutely your nailed-on starter, plus another. Cameron Carter-Vickers gets a game when he's fit. Trusty, when Carter-Vickers is back, Trusty's back on the bench, isn't he? He's not done enough to get that place in that jersey from Liam Scales. Absolutely not. Tony Cassidy brings up another good point, Tony. And you say no red cards, please, because obviously we have seen that and how that affects your game in Europe away from home last season. The ref tonight was a ref that we had against Feyenoord. We got 2 red cards. There's no coming back from that. We also got Maeda sent off against Atletico Madrid. Against a team like that, they are going to pick you to pieces, and that's exactly what they did. 6-0. Tonight, we're coming into this game. You're right, Tony. It's margins. We've got to stick to the game plan, and in order to do that, we need 11 men on the park. We have to be, Michael Ross, pump-proof tonight. I think that's a great term that we're going to use in the lexicon of terms on Acsom moving forward. We need to be pump-proof. Absolutely. Ian Roy, you're back in. As we know, Atalanta lie 6th in Serie A, conceding 13. We can score a goal or two. I agree with you, and I think we need to target them down the wings. We need our wingers to be at the absolute top of their game. Should have kept Jens. Donny, Tiny Hands, that's a brilliant discussion point. Maurice Jens, at the time, we balked at the transfer fee. Since then, a look at the money we've spent. We've spent over 13 million quid on 3 centre-halves, and not one of them at the moment is a stick-on. One of them's away out on loan. One of them's warming the bench underneath Stephen Welsh in terms of his ranking. And the other one, as I say, a lot of people are currently on the fence about. So thanks, everybody, for getting involved in the chat. Keep it coming in. Give me a few predictions. Give me a few predictions for tonight. We've got XDG83X. He was covered for Scales, but the lad has been on form. Are we talking about Trusty? Are we talking about Trusty, DG, in terms of him being on form? So how come we've actually got almost 650 watching on the live stream? Give us a big thumbs up, as Desi G says. Give us a thumbs up because it helps us on the YouTube channel. No Trusty in Trusty or Valle, says Kieran. I think that Valle needs to check his studs, as was pointed out earlier on. I think he's still adapting to the surface, actually, having come from Spain, because he spent a lot of time on his backside. That can be absolutely vital, Kieran. I am not, as I say, I'm not sitting on the fence. Have I seen enough from the two of them to think that they would replace Scales or Taylor? No. So tonight's a massive night for the both players. AGSC Tech cannot judge Big Trusty. He's been plunged into the wrong side of the fence. Got to look at 20 games. I don't disagree with that either. Give me a few predictions. Okay, Uncle Nobby Steamboat, 0-1 Celtic. All right, so Celtic are going to win 1-0. Joseph, Celtic are going to win 2-1. Colin Rogers reckons that 4 goals will be scored by Atalanta. I don't disagree with that. But you also reckon we can get 4. Let's hope so. I'll tell you something. Go out there and enjoy it. Hopefully we bring something out of this game that is positive and tangible to take into our next fixture in the Champions League. I don't think we did that against Dortmund. Enjoy the game. I'll be back with you at half-time. And hopefully we're talking about a positive first of 45. Thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.